It was a bright, crisp morning over the skies of Germany. And a young American pilot, barely 24 years old, climbed into his B-17 Flying Fortress. Knowing that each mission carried the weight of life and death, the men of the 8th Air Force had flown countless sorties over hostile territory. And every raid was a gamble. Anti-aircraft fire, or flak, was deadly enough, but the Luftwaffe fighters that patrolled the skies made every moment a potential last. That morning, nothing would prepare him for what was about to happen. A moment so extreme that it would defy belief and become a story told for generations. As the formation of B-17s swept over enemy lines, the young pilot's plane took position among its squadron. The bomber had been heavily armed, with multiple gun stations to fend off enemy attacks. But even the might of the flying fortress was no guarantee against determined German pilots. The sky was a mix of blue and smoke, sunlight glinting off the silver fuselages when the first warning signs appeared. Tracer rounds from Messerschmitts slicing through the air, flak bursting like deadly fireworks all around them. Then came the unthinkable. In a split second, a coordinated attack by German fighters tore through the plane, and the B-17 was literally cut in half. Imagine the moment. The forward fuselage detached, the aircraft shaking violently, instruments spinning, and alarms blaring. There is a natural assumption that once a plane is split in two at 24,000 feet, there is no hope. But in that instant, a miracle of survival began to unfold. The pilot, with his training and instinct honed from countless hours in the air, didn't panic. Every second counted, and he had to act faster than fear itself. He gripped the controls, feeling the unnatural wobble of the aircraft, the weight shifting unpredictably as the fuselage buckled. Yet somehow, he maintained control. Or at least, enough control to prevent a total plunge into oblivion. High above the ground, every movement was a calculation between life and death. The cold at 24,000 feet was biting, the wind howling around the wrecked fuselage like a living thing, and oxygen was thin. Many men would have frozen in terror, but the young pilot's mind was clear, razor-focused. The B-17, though grievously wounded, was still in the sky, and he was determined to keep it there. This wasn't just about survival. It was about protecting his crew. Every gunner, every crew member, was relying on him to make split-second decisions that could mean the difference between life and death. As the plane began its downward spiral, he had to navigate not just the physical dangers but the psychological weight of what had just happened. The sensation of falling through the sky in a half-destroyed plane is impossible to fully convey. But it's safe to say that it was chaos incarnate. The controls were unreliable. The fuselage groaned under stress, and the engines might fail at any moment. Yet in the midst of this nightmare, there was a singular focus. Keep the plane in the air, keep the guns firing, and somehow survive the fall. Every decision was life or death, and the young pilot rose to the occasion. The plane's descent was terrifying, but he managed to maintain a semblance of control. He had trained for emergencies. Yes. But nothing could have prepared him for the sensation of the entire aircraft splitting apart. Mid-flight. Still, with calm precision and a steadiness that belied his age, he manipulated the controls, adjusted the throttles, and used every ounce of skill to stabilize what remained of the plane. It was a feat that seemed impossible. And yet there he was, piloting a mangled B-17 through flak-filled skies, knowing that every second brought him closer to either a miraculous landing or catastrophic failure. Below, the German defenses could only watch as this half-destroyed behemoth refused to fall like the others. Flak and fighter attacks continued relentlessly. But the young pilot's determination was unwavering. He kept the plane's trajectory as steady as possible, calculating angles, speed, and descent while the plane groaned and shuddered around him. It's hard to overstate the combination of courage, instinct, and technical skill required in that moment. Many experienced pilots might have succumbed to shock or panic. But he held the course, drawing on every lesson learned, every drill memorized, every ounce of mental and physical stamina. In the end, what made this story so extraordinary was not just the plane surviving the split or the altitude from which it fell. It was the human spirit at the center of it. At just 24 years old, a young man faced the unimaginable and not only survived but maintained the fighting capability of his aircraft. This wasn't a lucky twist of fate. It was courage, skill, and sheer willpower in its purest form. His survival became a testament to what humans can endure when trained, focused, and determined, and it remains one of the most remarkable stories of aerial combat in World War II. Even decades later, when the story is told, people marvel at how a B-17 could be cut in half, how a young pilot could survive, and how the chaos of war could be met with such remarkable composure. It's a reminder that even in the deadliest, most hopeless situations, the combination of skill, courage, and determination can create miracles. The sky, at that moment, belonged to no one. Not the attackers, not the defenders, but to the pilot who refused to let the plane, or his crew, fall without a fight. Even as the B-17 was ripped in half, spinning and plunging through the thin, icy air at 24,000 feet, the young pilot's mind was not consumed with fear. He was consumed with duty. Every fiber of his being, every second of training, every instinct drilled into him by countless hours in simulators and real combat missions, converged into one singular purpose: protect his crew, keep fighting, and never give up. At an age when most people are still finding their footing in the world, he was facing a situation that most seasoned veterans could only imagine in nightmares. Yet in the midst of this inferno, he displayed a level of courage and composure that seemed almost superhuman. As the fuselage shook violently, he scanned the aircraft, aware of the crew's positions and the guns that were still functional. Despite the plane being half gone, several gunners were still in place, bracing themselves as bullets zipped past and flak exploded nearby. The young pilot knew that every second he could hold the plane steady might allow someone to survive. In those moments, heroism was not a conscious decision. It was instinct. His hands moved with precision across the throttles and controls, his eyes constantly assessing angles, trajectory, and threats. There was no room for hesitation, and he refused to give even an inch of panic to the chaos around him. One of the most remarkable aspects of this ordeal was that, even in a half-destroyed plane, the pilot continued to operate the B-17's guns high above the German countryside. As the aircraft spiraled, he and his crew engaged enemy fighters with relentless determination. Each round fired was more than just an act of defense. It was a statement of defiance. In the midst of a near-impossible situation, they were still holding the line, refusing to let the attackers feel victory. Every burst of gunfire was a pulse of hope, a message that they would not go quietly. It's the kind of bravery that seems almost cinematic. Yet it was real, raw, and terrifying in its immediacy. The psychological strain alone would have been enough to break most men. The young pilot was acutely aware of the damage to the aircraft, the odds stacked impossibly against them, and the ever-present threat of a fatal plunge to the earth below. Yet instead of succumbing to fear, he harnessed it, channeling it into focus. The cockpit was a storm of noise, alarms, and the groaning metal of the B-17, but his mind remained clear, tactical, and methodical. He had to make life-or-death decisions in seconds, balancing the plane's unstable flight with the need to continue engaging the enemy. There was no margin for error, and he executed with the precision of a man who had embraced his role completely. Each moment of combat became a testament to human endurance. He moved through a landscape of fire and steel, with the wind screaming past, oxygen thin, and temperatures dropping dangerously low. Every pull on the yoke, every adjustment of the rudder, was calculated to keep the remaining fuselage intact while maintaining enough speed and altitude to give his crew a fighting chance. The gunners, inspired and reassured by his calm presence, continued to fire, each shot a small act of resistance against impossible odds. Together, they became a machine of defiance, proving that courage is not the absence of fear, but the mastery of it. What makes this story extraordinary is not only the skill involved but the unyielding spirit. When you think about heroism, it's often portrayed as a single act, charging into danger or saving a life in a moment of split-second decision. But true heroism, as demonstrated by this young pilot, is sustained over time, maintained under unrelenting pressure, and expressed in continuous action. For minutes that must have felt like hours, he and his crew fought as the plane descended, refusing to surrender control, refusing to give up, and refusing to let the circumstances dictate the outcome. As the B-17 plummeted, the young pilot's determination inspired his crew to perform beyond what they may have thought possible. They were witnessing someone their own age demonstrating a level of courage that defied comprehension, and it changed the dynamic in the plane. Fear was present, of course, but it was tempered by action, by leadership, and by the relentless will to survive. He had become the axis around which hope revolved, and that hope was what enabled the gunners to continue firing, the crew to brace for impact, and the aircraft to remain aloft long enough for rescue or landing to be conceivable. When the story of this mission is retold, what resonates most is the pilot's refusal to quit, his relentless commitment to his duty, and his capacity to inspire courage in others, even in the face of near-certain death. It's one thing to survive. It's another to continue to fight. To maintain focus and control, and to protect others while every element around you is collapsing. That combination of technical skill, instinct, and pure human will is what elevates this story from remarkable to legendary. Ultimately, the young pilot's heroism serves as a reminder of what humans are capable of when faced with extreme adversity. It's a story not just of survival, but of defiance, courage, and relentless spirit. Even decades later, when historians, veterans, and enthusiasts recount the events at 24,000 feet, they do so in awe of a young man who turned a catastrophic disaster into a testament of bravery. It's a narrative that reminds us that heroism is often quiet, continuous, and defined by actions taken when most would succumb to fear. In the sky that day, half a B-17 became a stage for extraordinary courage, and a 24-year-old pilot showed the world what it truly means to fight until the very end.